Test 1, 2. Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. What we're going to be doing today is having a look at some of the major overhauls that are going to be coming with the Echoes of the Atlas expansion. So I'm just going to give people a little bit of time to find this stream, and if you're watching this after the fact, what I'm going to do is put a little spot that you can jump ahead to in the description of the video below. So you'll be able to just click a little button and jump further forward. But what we've got here is the 3.13 buffs and nerfs announcements have come out today. And so there's a whole lot of information there in terms of what's being changed in Echoes of the Atlas and some of the core overarching decisions. There's also a whole lot of discussion of reworked and changed Ascendancy classes. Might have a first look through the reworked Ascendancy information, and then after that we will then have a look-see at the other things that are being done in the 3.13 expansion. So there's been a number of minor changes to Ascendancies. I've made a separate video discussing the Elementalist, which is probably the overhaul I'm most excited by, and also the Deadeye. There's been a few little changes around the edges to the Raider, which seem to be pretty interesting, at least from my perspective. I think there's some good stuff there, but we'll have to have a look and see what people think there. Sorry about that brief echo. That was just due to me testing something with the stream. Okay, so at this point, let's start going through the main changes to Ascendancies. So firstly, with the Slayer, we've had the Brutal Fervor nodes being changed. So this is getting the increased maximum recovery per life leech. Life leech is a monumentally complex stat, and it's really beyond what can be discussed in the scope of a single video. That's going to be talking about other things as well. It's also having reduced damage taken while leeching added to it, at the expense of losing out on quite a big chunk of attack speed while leeching and attack damage while leeching. And also you did have some reduced damage taken while leeching, but that stat has been changed in magnitude. So it's gone from 6% to 10%. A 10% reduced damage taken while leeching is a really powerful defensive mod. This is something that's easy to, sources of reduced damage taken are really powerful in general, and so I think this is going to be something a lot of players are going to underestimate, and ultimately I think Brutal Fervor is in a better place than it was, but you're losing out on some of these damage nodes. So your damage on a Slayer early game is going to be less impressive than it was, but ultimately the defensive bonuses are probably going to make up for that. In terms of consequences for gearing, if you're going to be taking Brutal Fervor, you want to prioritize gear on equipment because your Ascendancy is now providing you more durability. Next up we have Masterful Form, which is just getting miles better. This is the one that sets the maximum number of frenzy charges you have to be equal to the maximum number. It changes your maximum number of endurance charges to be equal to your maximum number of frenzy charges. This is quite a bit better than it used to be because it's gaining +1 additional max frenzy. That's going to stack with the maximum endurance charge. Let me be more precise. That is going to effectively be the same as giving you a maximum endurance charge as well. And so ultimately, Masterful Form is looking really good. So if you're taking Masterful Form, you're going to want to then pick up as many maximum frenzy charge nodes as possible around the tree. And you're also going to want to gear for maximum frenzy charges. You're then going to need to find sources of frenzy and endurance charges on gear. Frenzy charge replenishing is really easy on a Slayer because you can just use the Blood Rage skill, but you're going to have a little bit of trouble with the endurance charges. You're going to need to find some sort of gear solution for that, or you can weave in activating Enduring Cry. I am keeping a check on the chat for anyone, if anyone's got any questions, fire away there. And I will see them. I'm sort of alt-tabbing in and out, and we'll see them pretty quickly. If you do have any questions, fire away. Overwhelm is getting flat out buffed. I think this was actually 8% at one time, and then I think it got nerfed to 7.5%. Now they're going back to 8%. Base critical strike chance is really significant here. This is essentially this makes all sources of critical strike that you get much better than they otherwise would be. Overwhelm is really powerful, and it makes a bunch of 4% or 5% weapons better than they'd otherwise be. All in all, really, really, really strong. And something that you seriously want to consider using on any Slayer build. It's going to be hard to justify not taking Overwhelm most of the time. Endless Hunger gets better. 20% increased attack speed while leeching. So that's basically the attack speed that was lost from Brutal Fervor. I think from memory these two swapped on places on the passive tree as well. So that's basically going to be something that will help you make up for some of this lost damage with Brutal Fervor. Impact is going from +2 range to +4 range, so this is all good. This is a considerable buff to the sort of amounts of damage that you're going to be doing. Not to your damage, but your damage projection. All good things here, and this is going to put Slayer in a better place than it was if you're going to take Impact. Impact is sort of hard to fit in because the Slayer has so many other good nodes. But additional melee strike range, if you're playing any of the strike skills, you kind of just have to fit it in. Note that this does not affect slams. So melee skills, for them to benefit from Impact, they have to have the strike tag on them. So that's things like Molten Strike will get a benefit from this, but not something like Earthquake. Earthquake that is intrinsically an area skill won't benefit from this. So do keep that in mind, but ultimately, I think if you can fit Impact in and you're playing any sort of strike build, you need to take it. Okay, so just a quick thing there. It looks like the stream is struggling a little bit at the moment. I'm just trying to work out what that is. I'm just going to give it 3 seconds off to catch up. We've got it back going again. Hopefully that will stop having a tantrum at this point and get back to where we want to be. Headsman is is losing the more damage against unique enemies from the... Well, that's being removed and being replaced with more damage with hits and ailments against unique enemies. Effectively, this is basically no change for most builds. There'd be some really extreme corner cases with Slayers that are using various other sources that are not hits and not ailments to deal damage, which is basically damage over time from things like Contagion or Decay support. Really, that's not going to come up very often at all, and it's basically no change. Okay, now, in terms of... sorry, I was just checking something there. It looked like I was having some trouble with the stream again, but it's come back. The attack damage and life leech nodes are just getting better at life leech. The amount of life that you're leeching doesn't really matter once you've got powerful weapons, but very early in a league, this will make a Slayer seem smoother. And then we have some minor things related to charges, but these ultimately, the Frenzy and Endurance charge section of the Slayer is looking better. Is there anyone... oh, you're asking here, does a 10% more damage if you've killed recently not apply to ailments? I'd need to check that out. No, it says it's universal 10% more damage if you've killed recently from memory, which would mean that it does apply to ailments. It's just... This Headsman wording was really clunky and confusing. The new wording is clunky and confusing, but I'm not really sure why they're making this change ultimately. It's just they've decided to make a change for the sake of a change, but that's a good question to ask there, but yeah. So you don't know what your starter will be. I'm thinking I might start with an Elementalist Divine Ire character, taking advantage of the fact that all your damage can ignite now. That's where I'm thinking of going, but ultimately that's going to be a decision people make themselves. There's a lot of other things we need to see. The big decision, like decision day is tomorrow for what your league start should be. That's going to be when we have the patch notes. Patch notes are the thing that let you decide what to start. And you might just want to hold off on a couple of things in case gems have been rebalanced hard. then sometimes that might make you change your mind. But tomorrow, 24 hours from the time of this stream is when it's safe to make your decisions. Given that we've got a few more people in at the moment, I'm just going to go a lot faster through the other Ascendancies and discuss the main broad sweepings of the changes, because the main thing we want to discuss today is going to be the game balance manifesto. And that's actually pretty quick. And yes, Frostbomb Elementalist, Michael's saying in chat there, is something that a lot of people are hyped for. And I think it's got a lot of potential as well, similar to Divine Ire, really. If it turns out that Divine Ire is bad, the other bonus is that you can respec into Frostbomb really easily. So, the Gladiator key changes that people have pointed out to me are that it is going to be a much better Ascendancy for using staves with. So let's just stop my mobile from ringing. That's a telemarketer. So the Gladiator is getting a whole lot of extra... the Gladiator is getting a whole lot of its nodes that are only about blocking with a shield, appear to being changed to work for all types of attacks. And so in particular, this means that you'll be able to use a staff and use the Gladiator will be able to take advantage of block chance with staves, but also really importantly, one of the counterattacks that's based on blocks is going to be really good as well. So that's the big change with Gladiator. Ultimately though, the Gladiator is basically the same build that it always was. It is the master of... It is the single tankiest Ascendancy for melee characters. It is the master of block, and it also has all of its powerful bleed effects as an option as well. Ultimately, you're still going to make a difficult choice with the Gladiator. Am I a bleed-oriented character, or am I a block-oriented character? Because you can't quite specialize in both. You do need to pick one of them, but you'll be very good at whichever one you pick. The champion's getting nerfs. Most importantly, Master of Metal. The impales you inflict last 1 additional hit instead of 2, and so that's basically being halved in power, and 20% chance to impale enemies on hits with attacks is being removed. Chance to impale is fine, you can get that easily elsewhere, but the impales lasting 1 additional hit instead of 2 is a considerable nerf to the Ascendancy. But otherwise, I think the Ascendancy is in a pretty good spot. It's always been really good, and whilst those nerfs are considerable, they're not enormous. One other thing of note, Unstoppable Hero was God mode when you were leveling, 1,000 to armor and evasion rating while you have Fortify. That's being nerfed down to 500, which is still considerable, and you are picking up a couple of other little bonuses to make up for it partly. So ultimately, Champions has gone from unquestioned best melee Ascendancy to a solid contender that should still be really good, but that isn't the god that it used to be. It also picks up from some powerful Fortify effect, and Fortify effect is really, really good. Assassin, nerfs across the board, but it's still really good. That'll be covered a bit more when we go to the Game Balance Manifesto. Saboteur is getting simplified. There's a lot of little effects in there that sort of add up. So you've got things like Explosives Expert that's got 30% to crit multi against burning enemies, increased area of effect, reduced area damage taken from hits. This is being simplified into a bigger crit multi against burning enemies. That's a nerf to Explosives Expert, but still, people that are interested in taking it will still get it. Will still get something meaningful from it. Most people still won't take it. Born in the Shadows is being simplified. Lots of things are being simplified in here. Pyromaniac is being made a little bit worse, I think, overall. It is now being much more of a life recovery node. It's better at life recovery, but at the expense of losing some of the mana reservation bonuses for mines. All in all, though, Saboteur keeps its overarching identity as the trap and mine character. It's still the best in that niche, and it's only slightly worse than it was. Trickster is taking big nerfs almost all around, which is needed because, like, Trickster and Assassin have been the 2 best Ascendancies for so many things for so long. If you wanted a critical strike-based spellcaster, Assassin was the correct choice. It's no longer Assassin is the correct choice, Assassin is still a good choice. And for Trickster, it's going to be different again. It's no longer the best DOT class. I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat at the moment. So we've got, hey, Evil Monkey. It is indeed, Kern. It is it is replacing Pyromaniac to what it was prior to a previous nerf. Ricky, full patch notes are coming out in about 18 hours, I think. So now plus 18 hours, give or take a little bit, depending upon how long it takes GGG to prepare them. Historically, it would be now plus 21 to 22 hours, but they've been early on everything for this league. Brap is asking, will Cast on Critical Strike Ice Nova Assassin still be fine? Yes, it will be. Yeah, Cast on Crit Ice Nova Assassin will still be good. It will still get a lot out of... everything that made it work will still work. It's just there's going to be a few little debuffs to it. So if we have a quick look, Opportunistic is going to be worse. You're no longer going to get movement speed, which is bad for it, but it's still going to be fine. Mistwalker's getting nerfed, but it's still probably the best 2-point defensive node on the entire tree. You weren't taking these nodes anyway. Deadly Infusion, you're going to lose some movement speed. And there's the Power Charge Duration nodes are getting buffed, but they're irrelevant to you. You pretty much always have it. Ultimately, you're losing movement speed. That's the key nerf to Cast on Crit Assassin, and it will still be good enough. It's still going to be strong. In terms of the questions around the Trickster nerfs, so yeah, it's mostly defensive nerfs to Trickster. It's still going to be fine, and DOT builds, I think you'll be making a choice. You'll go Chieftain if you want to be tanky and you're a fire DOT build. Occultist is going to be if you want to be tanky and be cold or chaos DOT, and the Trickster is going to be if you want to be a little bit more clear speed oriented and you want to be a cold or chaos DOT build. And also Tricksters can still be Ignite as well. Just catching up on chat. So Enraged Monkey, hey, yeah, this is just live. This is me starting late. I've just got out of work. So Shadab is asking, will Bleed Bow Gladiator still be good? Yes, it will. Yep. There's very little changes to Gladiator that don't affect staves. So yeah, Bleed Bow Gladiator will still be a really solid build at all sorts of spots. Chris, yeah, Reddit's been up in arms about this, but ultimately I think that the primary function of a nerf really is to make content last longer, because otherwise if you keep buffing power level of characters, content that used to be endgame ceases to be endgame. And that's fine, like, you know, it's fine to have, say, Shaper now is about as difficult as the Eternal Labyrinth was 3 years ago. That's fine, that means that more people get exposed to that encounter. But the problem is when power creep is so fast that content is basically obsoleted before the it gets replaced with new endgame challenges. And I think that that's one of the problems that we were getting close to. So I'm glad that we're seeing more nerfs than buffs on the high power end of the spectrum there. And yeah, ultimately the game does need to slow down a little bit. And Delirium actually is an interesting one where Delirium at 100% Delirious content is slower for most players unless you're at the extreme top end of power. And yeah, ultimately, aura stacking and carrions are getting smashed over the head with the nerf bat, and I think that's a good thing as well. That's just going to make the game more fun because it's going to add more things to endgame, things that aren't endgame in this league, like Cirrus, like Uber Elder, like 100% Delirious maps. These will be endgame again because they'll be challenging. You'll be able to fail them again. Whereas ultimately, aura stackers couldn't fail any of the... There was no content in the game outside Delve 1500 plus that an aura stacker or carrion build could fail unless they were really careless. And thanks for the virtual beer, Colin Sausage. Juggernaut's interesting. Undeniable's being changed, and the first thing that I saw was the removed 1,000 to accuracy rating, and I saw the removed of gain accuracy rating equal to your strength, and I was like, ooh, someone at GGG has had the same ideas that I have. And that's, I think they're called Storm Rider boots. One of the new items grants a whole bunch of lightning damage based upon the amount of strength based upon the amount of accuracy your character's got. I was thinking, okay, they've already thought of that and they've decided to preemptively nerf it. Well, actually, no, they've thought of it and they've decided to preemptively buff it. So you gain accuracy rating equal to twice your strength, and you also gain more benefit from accuracy rating. Ultimately, I think that the Storm Rider boots combo, and unfortunately I don't have an image of the Storm Rider boots to show you at the moment, but it is in the official trailer video, so it's an official GGG source. They're looking really interesting. You can build some ridiculous amounts of accuracy. Me and another player were talking about this in my Discord last night, which I'll give people a link to the Discord towards the end of the stream and in the description of the video below. I haven't got one handy to do right now. But we were discussing that the amount of strength and accuracy that you can stack at the moment is really, really, really ridiculous there. Ultimately, you can probably get an accuracy score by using the split personality jewels. You can probably get an accuracy score in the 10,000 plus range. Get a huge amount of flat lightning damage and a huge amount of attack speed from here. And ultimately, that is going to be a Juggernaut in a can. Those boots are going to power some sort of new, weird and wonderful build that is going to do lightning damage from its boots, and maybe, because it's strength stacking, maybe fire damage from its weapon. And that's just going to do something bizarre we haven't seen before. I don't know if it's going to be good or not, but that's something I'm excited to see with the Juggernaut. Is an undeniable and boots wander possible? Yes, I think it probably is, Ricky. And also Hand of Wisdom in action, someone's mentioning there, is another thing that's worth considering. Hand of Wisdom in action has 12% accuracy, am I right on that, Kern? Or am I wrong on that? Just answering Idarid on Trickster, I've gone quickly over Trickster. Basically, it's getting a few nerfs, but not absolutely gutted. If you're wanting to play Toxic Rain, I would suggest that you consider the Trickster, that you consider the Pathfinder, that you consider the Raider, and that you, don't really consider the Deadeye. I don't think Deadeye offers anything for Toxic Rain anymore. And also consider the Ascendant, and also consider the Occultist if you want to go a little bit hipster. I think all of those are going to have powerful synergies with Toxic Rain. You could also consider going Saboteur and using Toxic Rain with Mines. Toxic Rain and Mines has been strong for a long time, and nothing in the Saboteur is going to really change that. Yeah, I think it's Prathamesh. Onslaught Effect is looking absolutely crazy as well. Thanks, Ricky. So Berserker is interesting in that it's getting a couple of little buffs, but Crave the Slaughter getting +10 to maximum rage is the one that's got me most excited. There's definitely a chance to make something, like basically any build that was a Berserker previously is going to be better as a Berserker now than it used to be, because it's pretty much straight around buffs, and all of the builds that used to work will still work. But I'm really looking forward to the idea of using rage support in conjunction with all of these additional sources of rage, and just smashing things hard. That's what the Berserker's looking like. It's good at, and it's basically the same thing it was, and just a little bit better. From a Chieftain perspective, we've got pretty small changes. Tessalio is actually getting better. Now, it's losing the regen 2% of life per second, which seems to be quite a serious nerf. But getting 15% of fizz damage from hits taken as fire is a big buff. And I think that for a Chieftain, you've got so many sources of regen that losing this regen, while significant, it's not any sort of real deal breaker. Tessalio is at least as good as it used to be. And overall, I think it's looking really strong. For Tukahama War's Herald, you're getting more effects from your totems. I've never played Chieftains with totems, but going from 1% of damage dealt by your totems leech to his life to 2% is just something that benefits you early on in the league when you don't have a powerful weapon, you're not doing a lot of damage. The increased effective buffs granted by your ancestor totems is good. So ultimately, I think Tukahama is looking pretty strong too. Necromancer's been nerfed across the board, but not gutted. And I think there's a lot of discussion on Reddit that Necromancers are dead. I don't think they are. Occultist is, generally speaking, better than it used to be. An Elementalist has been transformed, and I've done a video on that. I do actually agree with what Michael's saying in chat now about Tassalio being nerfed hard for Righteous Fire. That's correct. I'd forgotten Righteous Fire existed. Sorry. I've played that skill back when it was good. Back in Harbinger League, I think it was that I played it. But I wouldn't use Righteous Fire as a primary damage source. I do agree, though, that if you were wanting to do so, Chieftain has just been punched in the head. So Elementalist overall, the Golem side is worse. The Elemental spellcasting is better. The build should still be very much viable, both builds. And in fact, I'm looking forward to playing around with Elementalist a lot. I am considering several things with Elementalist, actually. I'm considering Elemental Hit. I'm considering making a build around Divine Ire. And there's certainly a lot of talk on the Path of Exile subreddit of a Frostbomb Elementalist. I'm not intending to make a build around Frostbomb Elementalist, but it does look like it could be good. And it's also going to be my plan B if Divine Ire ends up being bad. Deadeye, we did a whole video on massive changes, and as an overall package, I think it's a buff, but for certain builds, it's certainly been nerfed. And ultimately, you're just going to have a look at it. Deadeye no longer offers anything to archer builds that are doing AoE attacks. It's only projectile attacks, but it's looking pretty good overall. And yeah, there's a lot of it. So Graham Lindsell is asking about Brand Elementalist. Are you thinking Stormbrand there, or are you thinking Armageddon Brand, or something else? My thoughts on brands for an Elementalist are that the Elementalist likes to do individual big hits in the current state of the game. That's my thoughts at the moment, because of all of the synergies with elemental ailments. So I'm not looking to go that way, but I could be wrong on that front. By all means, try Stormbrand as an Elementalist and prove me wrong. I'm not seeing it, but it's probably pretty good. Raider has had a few changes, and overall, I think it's gotten slightly better overall, but it's not unambiguous, and there's lots of people that think it's worse than it was before. So ultimately, Raiders nodes have been simplified. It's not so much that they're better or worse, it's that they're simpler than they used to be. So, you have things like removing all these chances to gain Onslaught with just flat permanent Onslaught, granting huge amounts of Onslaught effect. So ultimately, I think the Raider now has something like 280% Onslaught effect total. So that's 56% permanent move speed, if I'm right, if my maths is right. I may have missed some changes, but basically that's massive. 56% permanent move speed is a permanent Quicksilver Flask of Adrenaline. It's a huge buff to your survivability if you're able to execute manual dodges of skills. And so, yeah, I'm impressed with the Raider, and I think it's something that is definitely on my radar as a potential thing to play. Especially if you were to go the really fastest way is to take all the Frenzy charges and all of the Onslaught side of things, and just zip around like crazy. Pathfinder has had a couple of little changes to it. The first thing that comes to mind is that Nature's Reprisal is going to gain 40% of chaos physical damage converted to chaos, and there's a number of skills that have 60% inherent conversion. From memory, Cobralash does this, and this means that if you take Nature's Reprisal on a Cobralash build, you are completely immune to Physical Reflect, and you only need to scale one type of damage. So lots of interesting things you can go with there. I definitely think they're trying to make Pathfinder a top-tier contender for Cobralash, and I think there may be a build that's really good on that, along those sorts of lines. So there's also this recover 6% of life when you use a flask on Master Surgeon. That's just going to be so good on a Pathfinder. That is going to be all the life recovery that you need. So that's really, really, really strong. Inquisitor is being overhauled. I kind of need to do a video on Inquisitor at some point. It's just one that's required so much thinking about that I haven't been able to get a video done on it. But it's certainly something that is looking totally different to what it used to be. The particularly interesting thing was the option to have 4 permanent... Oh, hang on, no, that's the Hierophant that has the 4 permanent... four permanent endurance charges and power charges. It's the gain Battle Mage on one of the modes. That what Battle Mage does is it causes you to gain all of your weapons damage as additional spell damage, which is incredible with a couple of specific weapons, and Rebuke of the Vaal is the first one that comes to mind. Rebuke of the Vaal does so much damage, so much flat damage, but is really hard to scale. If there's a way to make it work, then Rebuke of the Vaal and Battle Mage is just going to be incredible. It pretty much doubles the amount of damage that you do with Arc. The problem is that you're now dealing some physical, some lightning, some cold, some fire, and some chaos, and you may have trouble scaling all of these types of damage. So a lot of thought's going to need to go into it. I don't have the answers yet, but I think Instruments of Virtue with a single copy of Rebuke of the Vaal in one hand and some sort of Spellcaster Shield in the offhand, I think there's a build there. I just don't have all of the pieces to put together in my head. So that's something to keep in mind. So Hierophant is being changed a lot with its totems, and a lot of totem players currently think it's going to be a lot worse. I think they're probably right, but I'm not sure of that. And I really would need to see what hard numbers look like when we get the full passive tree, and also whether there's any additional major nodes that are added to the passive tree. Conviction of Power, though, is just such a cool node now. 4 minimum endurance charges, 4 minimum power charges, and +1 maximum power and maximum endurance charge. This node is incredible. What I do want to say about this, though, is that there is a really serious interaction that people may not be factoring in here. This does not work as well as you want with Discharge. So, with Discharge, you cannot spend endurance or power charges to go below your minimum. So this does not give you unlimited 4 endurance charge and 4 power charge discharges. It basically prevents you, unless you've got other sources of maximum power charges or endurance charges on your tree, it prevents you from using discharge with endurance charges or power charges at all. So that said, we're going to have to look at that, but it's going to be an interesting one. Yeah, Zotnot, my advice to people who are newer is just to mess around and have fun. Get to level 50, struggle your way through. When you stop having fun, when you start failing so often at content that you're no longer having fun, at that point what you want to do is stop doing that and start over with a new character. But your new character will be something that is, something that you follow a guide for. On Immortal Call, I would say that Immortal Call is no use to a build that's got the four minimum charges. I would use a different defensive skill instead. I mean, I love Molten Shell. I would use Molten Shell instead of Immortal Call there. So yeah, Hierophant's had a number of other changes. It has lost a bit on its maximum mana potential. That's a little bit of a nerf that was kind of needed because Archmage was really, really good. Archmage is one of those things that's sort of fallen under the radar a little bit because it was so strong, but Aura Stackers were better. On questions around Glacial Cascade, I have no idea if they're making Threshold Jewels for it or not. I'm trying to think, like you're thinking one that that removes its knockback or something like that. That could be interesting. They didn't go with any Threshold Jewels in the Heist League because they had the Anomalous and other alternate quality jewels. And there's quite a lot of variance with Glacial Cascade between the different versions of it. Jack Phoenix on Mjolnir builds, that's a very tough item to build around. I have never built around it, and so I'm not an expert on it. But if you were looking to play with Mjolnir, I would consider using, I think it's called Supreme Ostentation. There is a timeless jewel that causes all of your stats, all your item stat requirements to go away, and also all of the base effects of stats to stop affecting you. So that's something to keep in mind there. Hey, Urusk, thanks. So, yeah, having a quick look through the Guardian changes. The Guardian has had a number of minor changes that will sort of add up. But Harmony of Purpose is interesting. They really are doubling down on this idea that you should be able to get a lot of charges on a Guardian. This is probably getting us to the point that Guardian Discharge has like Guardian Self-Cast Discharge has a lot of potential. And also a Guardian that is using Divine Ire could conceivably get a lot out of just the channeling phase. So Divine Ire, if you've never played the skill, when you're charging it up, you pulse damage in a radius around you, but these are hits. These are small hits. So you're basically standing there charging up your laser, and everything around you is taking damage slowly. This damage isn't much, but it will trigger Harmony of Purpose, and then you let go and release your big Divine Ire charge. And during that time, you've probably built up some power charges to increase your chance to get a crit, and some frenzy charges, and also some endurance charges to stay alive. So that's something that's come to mind as a possibility there. We also have the various changes here to some of the other nodes. Nothing is a total rework. Now we have the Ascendant, and oh my god, there's so much in the Ascendant. Just answering some of the questions though, we've got, so what's the easiest class to play? The gold standard, in my opinion, for beginners is a build that's been put out, and I'll just type this in chat. If you Google that, Enki's Archwitch, it's a traditional spellcaster build that is what I would term medium power level. It's good enough to get all the way into the end game, and it's a very well-written guide and very easy to follow. And the guy that put it out is an absolute master at explaining to new players all sorts of things. That will start the game as a witch, and looks really, really good. So, just going through all the other comments, yeah, so Amahai Benarush, yeah, that's exactly the one I was talking about. I think it's called Supreme Ostentation or Supreme Ego, or it's not Supreme Ego, it's something like that, but it's a Timeless Dual node, and it does exactly what you said there. Ricky, on your Champion Summoner, I think you're in the wrong area of the passive tree at the start. I'm not going to rule out that it can be done, but I'm just not confident that I could design a Champion Summoner. Enraged Monkey 8, the charge generation from a Guardian, is it enough for Flicker Strike? I think you want just a little bit more, but you can probably get that extra bit from Blood Rage, so I think you could probably do it. Warask is asking about how good is a Bleed Bow Gladiator looking as a starter. I think it's going to be pretty much the same as it was, which is a very solid option. Concussive Crystal. Any effect that says you cannot inflict an ailment takes priority over something that says you always do. So for that reason, it's an absolute... can't trumps can. Think of it that way. So on the questions about is Enki's Archwitch build budget friendly, yes it is, and it covers guides as to how you would scale it up at various times as well. So it covers what to do during the axe, which is something I tend to skip when I'm making a build. I tend to just assume players, because most of my viewers tend to be intermediate players, I tend to assume people can just muddle through the axe, and they will then get, and then like if you're a beginner, that might not be something you're confident with doing. But Enki's Archwitch covers that as well. So it basically works for very, very, very basic. Vladislavs, I would not call someone that has a 100x budget in a league a casual player. I tend to... 100x is what I would amass from if I'm not playing the economy at all. But if you're looking for something on a 100 Exalt budget, I would say just work on getting a Headhunter and play any build that kills through hitting enemies. William is asking, will Ranger Ascendancies be good this league? I think yes. I think all three of them are solid. And if you're wanting to play a proper bow build, I would go Deadeye for damage projection, or Raider if you want to be zippy super fast and very hard to hit, but not deal as much damage. Nick, there is a hard cap of 95% on your chance to evade. So that is an absolute cap that cannot be exceeded. You will not be able to become immune to projectiles. What is best for Delve this league? That is an open question at the moment. I think that the traditional Delve builds are all looking pretty solid still, but let's wait for the patch notes to give an answer on that. Okay, so just jumping back to the Ascendant, there's just so many little changes here, but I'm kind of really like the Elementalist simple effect, which is that exposure you inflict applies an additional 20% to the affected resistance. The Ascendant is the most new player unfriendly class, and that's the reason that it's gated behind roughly hitting level 30 once on your account. So you can't play a Scion until you've completed the Dominus encounter in Act 3, and it's generally speaking something you get to about level 30 if you're a newer player. But these are looking like this is definitely really simple, really effective. You need to have effective ways of applying exposure. There's a number of ways of doing that, but the Elementalist, if you're playing an Ascendant, you probably can figure out how to do that yourself. Trickster is like, there's all sorts of little changes happening here, but the big thing is that you've got the chance to gain a Frenzy Charge and a Power Charge on kill. That's increasing, so that'll be more significant. On the flip side, you're losing a couple of other things. In terms of other things that really jump out, this is going to feel great to use, the recover 4% of life when you use a flask. It's not very strong, but it's going to feel good. Deadeye granting always Tailwind is great. And then there's, yeah, the Guardian is basically the same as it used to be, just a bit better. Gladiator is basically the same as it was, just a bit better. Lots and lots and lots of different things. Assassin is looking better, like getting 10% chance to gain elusive. Arcane Surge being better on the Hierophant is looking really solid. So generally speaking, there's no sweeping changes to the Ascendant, but a lot of the options are looking better, and I think the Ascendant will see wide play. Going back through the questions now, someone asked a question that got auto-modded. I'm not sure what that was. So I can't actually see what it was. What's the verdict on Assassin? I think the Assassin is nerfed considerably, but still okay. Woe is asking, is the Raider viable as a caster now? And I think the answer there is that it sort of always was. As an elemental spellcaster, it's a hipster choice, but a viable one. As for the option of playing a Berserker / Slayer Scion, that's been traditionally popular with bow builds. I just need to have a quick look at the Berserker effects again on that, or were they not changed? I can't actually remember what the Berserker does, so in terms of the Ascendant. It's pure damage from memory, but I can't think for the life of me how good it was. I would generally think that you'd be using some sort of physical bow setup for that, for a Berserker and Slayer Ascendant. Not sure on Schismatron's question about brands. Really not sure of some of the niche corner cases around brands. On Elementalist, Kevin Kohler is asking, is Elementalist is better with small hits instead of big? I think the other way around, because you can inflict some staggeringly big ignites, staggeringly big shocks, and staggeringly big chills with the Elementalist now. Although, by all means, prove me wrong. I think go ahead and run Stormbrand if you want. I think you'll be able to make it work. Is League starting with bows comfortable? I like League starting bow mines rather than direct attack bows, but it's not awful like it used to be. Mirage Archer's done a good thing there. If you're going Deadeye, you'll have the I think it's called Occupying Force will work with that. Ricky, I think Cobra Lash Pathfinder is looking really solid. Rusk is asking about Bladefall Blade Blast after the Assassin nerfs. I think it's still fine. Vladislav's, I'm going to get onto that when I talk about the Balanced Manifesto for aura stacking. I don't think they've nerfed aura stacking enough, but I'm open to being proven wrong on that. I still think it's still going to be the best possible build at high investment, but I don't know how. I'm not sure of that. That's my current thoughts on it. Non-Ignite Occultist Hex Blast. I've never played Hex Blast, and I haven't played an Occultist in a while, so I'm going to say Occultist Hex Blast is probably not going to be great because it wasn't great last league. That's what people have said about it for Non-Ignite. What's Up is asking, any way to make an Elemental hit Elementalist? Yes. I'm thinking of making a build around this. This is on my radar as something to try because it looks really, really, really solid. Ronnie is asking about Raider builds, and I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about the Raider over the next while. I think you can go. Don't feel constrained to the Frenzy nodes. I played in the Endless Delve race. I played a Raider that did not take the Frenzy Charge nodes. So they went the phasing nodes and the Onslaught nodes, and that felt fine. That was a cold damage over time build, and that worked. That felt like it was just fine. So in questions on, Faruqi is asking about Toxic Rain. I would personally play Toxic Rain on a Pathfinder or a Trickster or an Occultist or a Saboteur or a Raider, depending upon your preferences. Saboteur would be with Mines. And okay, so what I'm going to do is jump across to the development manifesto. So I'm going to fall a bit behind in questions for a sec. And just have a look through the core discussion. So we've just been talking about Ascendancies. Here's their philosophy. The key thing was that they wanted to increase the power of interesting and unique stats whilst removing weaker or secondary stats. That was their goal, and I think that's basically what they've done. Rebalance the power of notables within Ascendancies so that it's a meaningful choice. It's not like, say, the old Raider back before, I think it was 3.8, they did the last buffs to Raider. The only thing you would ever take in there, like the Frenzy Charge nodes were so much better than the Onslaught and the Phasing nodes, so no one would ever take the Phasing nodes, and you'd be like, oh, I'll take the Frenzy Charge nodes because they're awesome, and then I'm like, I'll have to take the Onslaught ones, I guess. They fixed that with Raider, and they fixed it well, in my opinion. All three of the branches are compelling, so that was their intentions there. I think they've done this pretty well, but time will tell if that is actually the case or not. So Aura Stackers. Aura Stackers, they are basically halving the effectiveness of the small passives on Cluster Jewels. Now, what's important here? So non-cost auras from your skills and increased effect of your curses are being nerfed from 6 and 5% down to 3%. And with the way that rounding works in Path of Exile, there's actually a bigger nerf than that. It's 25%. There's a 25% increased effectiveness of small passive nodes that you can roll on clusters, and that's going to do nothing now. So this is a really big nerf to Aura Stackers. The thing is, though, that Aura Stackers were so incredibly broken that this may actually not be as substantial a nerf as people are saying. I would have personally preferred to see an actual going further and absolutely obliterating the build nerf, but they haven't done that. We're going to find out, I think, over the next league, whether they've gone far enough or not. I would not be shocked if we still see a meta where Aura Stackers are the best build possible at high investment level, but I don't think they're going to be viable as league starters at all. Okay, so Impale mechanics are taking a number of changes, and basically this is the Impaler Keystone's interaction with Call of Steel is being deleted entirely, but Call of Steel is probably, it's also getting its own nerf as well. The Lord of Steel Jewel is getting a nerf. Ultimately, I think that the Call of Steel bonk builds, if you've ever played those, they're probably not going to work anymore. They can still function, but the Impaler Keystone now prevents Call of Steel from being effective for 4 seconds after you impale them, which is a pretty massive drawback to that playstyle, and I don't think that that build is going to work. It's certainly not going to be two-shotting bosses anymore, or if it does, at least there's going to be a 4-second period between them, and that means that the bosses are going to get some ability to counterattack. Minions are being nerfed all around, but it's not a smashing nerf like people are saying over on the Path of Exile subreddit, and I think that we may still see a situation where Raised Spectre builds are incredibly good, and Carrion Golems may still be incredibly good as well. So we're just going to have to see the exact numbers of that. They're going to come tomorrow. But ultimately, I think that if you're someone who really loves a minion playstyle, these nerfs are not enough to make it unviable. You can still play it. You're just not going to absolutely dominate endgame on minimal investment. A bunch of improvements to underused skills. Cobra Lash is really interesting. Cobra Lash is getting 5% more damage for each remaining chain, and its physical to chaos conversion is going to 60%. So this is these two things in conjunction are going to make Cobra Lash quite a bit better than it was. Cobra Lash is probably going to be usable on 2 Ascendancies. The Pathfinder, which has specific physical to chaos support, and the Assassin, just because of its poison synergies. And don't let people tell you that the Assassin is dead. I don't think it is. Frostbomb is going nuts. Frostbomb is looking absolutely bonkers. And there will be Frostbomb Ignite builds happening as a result of this change here. There will be people playing Frostbomb on Elementalist as Ignite, and also playing Frostbomb in conjunction with Cold to Fire support and the Chieftain Ascendancy to fully convert it to fire via other means, or the Avatar of Fire node on the passive tree, and then also using Ignite. Frostbomb could be really big as a skill. Earthshatter has had some minor mechanical nerfs. We're going to have to find out how that plays. Contagion is being nerfed flat out. I don't know if this is going to be a kill to the skill or not. I don't think it will be. I think Essence Drain Contagion will still be pretty good. Just having a quick look through some of the chat comments that have been coming up. I'm not going to get to everything, but will Lacerate Gladiator still be viable endgame with Shield? Yes, it will. I think that will definitely be used. Elemental Hit is already pretty strong, and I think Elemental Hit as a build on an Elementalist is going to be bonkers. So I think it's going to be really, really, really strong. The Elemental Hit, I would not be using Elemental Hit as a melee skill though. I'd definitely be using it as a bow attack, or as a wand attack, or as a wand mine skill, maybe as a bow mine skill as well. Lots of different options. So Mez thinks I'm underestimating Deadeye wall bouncing with Cobra Lash. I could well be. I'm not a font of all knowledge related to the game. It could well be that is still the best way to play it. I'm just going off my initial thoughts rather than being necessarily right. How will Frostbomb's buff affect Cosprey's Cast on Critical Strike Nova? That's a good question. I think you're going to have to use Frostbomb on those builds as a falling, in conjunction with your normal Cast on Crit support setup, and that'll just be an extra damage source. So I think there's Frostbomb will be an actual skill, and like EK is saying, Frostbomb will be an actual bomb now. It's not just a sort of debuff that makes enemies take more damage from your real skill. Frostbomb will be viable. The same way that Frostbomb used to dominate Act 1 leveling, it may well be a powerful skill at endgame now. So, Surgeon Flasks are being buffed. This is something that I think actually reverses a previous nerf. This is still not going to be good enough to use, I don't think, on most builds, but Cast on Critical Strike builds might use it. Replica Nebulous is getting nerfed hard. Replica Nebulous is getting the Indigon treatment, and it will probably still be extremely good after that. Replica Elbron's Warpath is getting nerfed by 37.5%, which is going to be a considerable drawback to it, but it's still going to be very good. And Martyr of Innocence and Disintegrator are being overhauled somewhat, but they will be quite good. A number of the most broken alternate quality effects are being nerfed hard, which all probably did deserve it. They had it coming. But the other big changes that are interesting are, so Elemental Aegis effects quickly. These are being buffed. They're available on the shields that drop from the unique Moon Temple boss, and also now from the Elementalist, the Primal Aegis. The Primal Aegis looks great. Then we've got from Tailwind. Tailwind's being nerfed by 20%, but the Deadeye's getting tools to use it better. So this is just basically transferring some of the power from the ridiculously powerful Tailwind boots, transferring that over to the Deadeye Ascendancy. And Farshot is being overhauled, and Farshot is going to be cool at this point, but it is not going to be a strict buff anymore. It's going to be something that is, generally speaking, a build-around effect rather than a straight buff, but it's looking really good. Having a quick look back at chat to catch up on things, and then that's actually everything that I wanted to cover on this, so we'll go to Q&A mode after that. Do I think that Void Sphere will end up seeing changes, even though it wasn't mentioned here? I love Void Sphere as it is. I really like Void Sphere currently. If you've got a spare 4-link in a build, it's so hard to go past Void Sphere, Second Wind, and some sort of other utility effect on it. Void Sphere is really strong at what it does, and what it does is protect you from trash mobs. It is really good. If you know you're going to get overrun by trash mobs, Void Sphere is great. What was the strongest brand for bossing? Probably Wintertide brand, although I've never played with that. If you have a look for Wintertide brand builds, you will find a bunch of them around. Battle Mage ideas. So I was mentioning before that I was really impressed by the thought of the Rebuke of the Vaal weapon. This is a puzzle to solve, and I don't have the solution to it, but I think that there's something there with Rebuke of the Vaal amping up the damage that your spells are doing. How are totems as a league starter? Totems as a league starter can be pretty solid. They're a slow play style, and I would give some thought to how they feel, but they do definitely work, and they're very good at killing bosses early in the league. Yeah, Armageddon brand also is good for bossing. Just going to quickly pause the stream and restart it because of tech issues. Okay, I think that's just recovered it. I was just getting a message that the stream wasn't working. Bleed Deadeye is a good question. This is something that I really don't know. I think it could be good, but I'm not sure. Peter Heath is asking how will Far Shot work in Ritual Circles and Echo's multi-boss arenas. You'll use it in conjunction with Decoy Totem. So basically Decoy Totem, run away, then use your comments. What do I think on GGG's statement on Ascendancy nerfs? Look, honestly, I think that in the current state of the game, nerfing the most powerful builds makes the game more fun. And I'd rather GGG actually said that than claim that these aren't major nerfs, because some of them are. And I think that's just a good thing because it adds more content to effectively endgame. So you hit a point where character power creep has rendered an encounter like the Shaper about as difficult as Eternal Labyrinth was 3 years ago. I don't think that's a bad thing, but you end up demoting content out of the endgame faster than it can be replaced if you keep buffing things. Whereas nerfs can protect what's in endgame at the moment, make it remain endgame for longer. So yeah, I think that, and I also think that the Ascendancy simplification is a good thing too. There's just so much to keep track of. Mishra is mentioning that they don't think that totems will be very good in Echoes because they'll die in arenas. I do agree on channeling totems, but I do think you'll be able to get your normal totems going, and ultimately better that the totems are taking damage than you are, because totems can be very quickly recast. Okay, so just having a quick look. Craig is asking about the Occupying Force passive on the Deadeye. They will follow you around. Oh, sorry, no, that's wrong. They're stationary. They're stationary. Sorry, I'm in my own little world at the moment. They're stationary. Yeah, that's correct. So will new support gems? I think Juniper Taxis is asking about the Trinity support gem. How will that interact with elemental conversion? I think that Trinity is based upon the highest individual type of damage that you deal. Trinity really strikes me as being all about elemental hit. Uniel, I think that the Assassin was so dominant for so long that if the Assassin was over-nerfed, then people that want to play an Assassin will play something else this league. They'll play a Raider for the speed, or they'll play a what do you call it? If they're wanting to play a crit spellcaster, maybe they'll play an Elementalist this league, or an Inquisitor, and then afterwards, if they've over-nerfed Assassin, then at some point in the future they can fix that. But I think that the Assassin was way too good for too long. And in terms of, Luke Whistle is asking what the near means, and I think that's in the context of Occupying Force. Someone put out someone took a screenshot from the original trailer of 3.13 launch trailer, and it is genuinely quite near. It looked like it was, say, 20% of a screen, maybe 15 to 20% of a screen. So it is actually genuinely quite near. Raphael's asking, is Toxic Rain a viable league starter after the nerf? I think it is, and it's better as a mine build than it is as a direct attack build. So yeah, I think Trinity support's best use case is definitely going to be in conjunction with the elemental hit. It's going to be a lot harder on dual element skills or tri-element skills, just partly because there's not that many of them. Anyways, folks, I think I want to, for the benefit of my own sanity, I might just call it at this point. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and definitely put your comments and questions in the description below, and then we can discuss further there. I've just gotten home from work before I ran this stream, and I thought, oh, I better get something in before I eat dinner, and I'm going to eat now because I'm starved. But thanks all for tuning in. If you've got comments and questions, like I say, fire away below. And I will also put a link in the chat to the Discord that I'm setting up. In fact, let me get that before I log off. And Discord's just loading in the background at the moment, so it shouldn't be too long. But yeah, thanks all for tuning in. And Discord, come on, you can do it. No, it's all good, man. It's a lot of fun. I do like the rapid fire Q&A sort of setup. It's a little bit crazy. So this is going to be valid for 12 hours, this Discord link. Oh, you just missed it, Panksum. I was just logging off at the moment. Hey, Sasha, sorry, I was just about to log off. But thanks all for tuning in, and that's a link to the Discord server that I've set up, valid for 12 hours, which once you're in, you're in. And I will see you all. You'll be able to watch the replay of this in a couple of minutes.